Captain Orion Kane stood on the crest of a low ridge overlooking the surface of planet Arventus. His survey pod nestled behind him like a small, trusting animal. The sky was streaked with vivid shades of teal and violet, caused by a peculiar chemical composition in the planet's thin atmosphere. Two pale moons hovered near the horizon, while a third much smaller moon hung overhead like a solitary eye. Soft, bioluminescent flora cast a faint blue glow across the undergrowth, creating an otherworldly tapestry of gently pulsing light. Orion's boots crunched on crystalline gravel as he adjusted his visor, which displayed atmospheric readings in a scrolling feed on the corner of his vision. He had made this place his base of operations 2 days ago, or at least as close to a base as you could get with a single-module survey craft. Typically, survey missions of the Frontier Division were well-staffed and supported by a larger starship in orbit, but tensions on the galactic frontier had stretched resources thin. As a result, Orion found himself operating alone, entrusted with the job of preliminary observation and data collection. He had arrived on Arventus without any expectation of encountering intelligent life. Preliminary scans showed plant and fungal life forms with luminous qualities, along with abundant insectoid creatures scurrying beneath glowing leaves. No one had predicted anything more advanced than small amphibious species lurking in the wetlands beyond. Yet that was precisely what made him jump the moment his portable scanner detected an anomaly, a life form reading distinctly unlike any local fauna. He followed the signal past ropey, phosphorescent vines that clung to massive, black bark trunks. Strands of fluorescent moss adorned the ground, carpeting it in shifting turquoise patterns. He had always found such alien worlds breathtaking. This one, though silent, had a surreal beauty that made him feel he was stepping onto the page of a fantasy novel. Then he spotted the crater. It wasn't large, perhaps 50 feet in diameter, and the edges of the vegetation around it had been scorched recently. The burning was still fresh enough that smoke trails had only just dissipated into the damp air. The faint smell of charred plant matter mingled with the sharper tang of oxygen. Something or someone must have impacted here within the past day or two, a possibility that made Orion's heart pound. His scanner pinged again, insisting that the strongest readings came from the very center of that crater. Advancing carefully, he toggled the visor to a broader spectrum setting. A shape appeared against the scorched earth, small and motionless. At first, it looked like some kind of local creature, until he drew closer. He realized it was a woman, her body tinted with an otherworldly blue hue. She lay curled on her side, entirely unclothed, with her arms wrapped around herself in a gesture of pure defensiveness. Orion's breath caught in his throat. Her skin glowed faintly, as though embedded with phosphorescent patterns reminiscent of the flora around them. Yet unlike the plants, her glow was rhythmic and carried subtle geometric lines, spreading across her shoulders, down her arms, around her ribs and spirals. He knelt beside her, forgetting for a moment all cautionary protocols about contamination. She was shivering, her eyes half-lidded, and her hair, pale and shimmering with an iridescent silver, clung to her face. He whispered, "Are you alive?" An absurd question, but he couldn't think of anything else to say. She seemed close to losing consciousness. Her lips parted, a dry gasp, but no words emerged. Carefully, Orion removed the small emergency thermal blanket he kept in his utility pack, draping it over her slim frame. Her eyelids twitched, and for a moment he saw the flash of large, liquid eyes, deep violet, uncertain and filled with a pain that struck him like a physical blow. He saw the fear there, but also a quiet longing, as though she scarcely believed someone would help her. She tried to speak, but only managed a few raspy sounds. Orion swallowed, toggling his helmet's translation matrix, though he doubted it would pick up anything coherent if she were too weak to speak. He lifted her gently, making sure to keep the blanket around her. She was surprisingly light, and the subtle glow of her skin felt warm through his gloves. He realized he was probably violating half a dozen frontier survey protocols by bringing an unregistered life form into close contact without scanning for pathogens. But faced with this mysterious, wounded being, he couldn't simply leave her there. By the time he reached his single-module survey craft, the woman had slipped into a half-conscious state. Orion laid her on the cot inside, activating the medical scanner above. The craft was cramped. A monitoring station jammed next to a compact lab table, a single bed, and a small storage compartment for supplies. Everything had its place, though. It was hardly comfortable. He worried the conditions were too primitive to offer real help. As the scanner hummed, Orion examined the preliminary readouts. Her physiology was partly reminiscent of humanoid norms: lungs, heart, but also there was a complexity in her neural network that caught his eye. Her cells contained genetically engineered markers, something that shouldn't exist in a natural evolutionary path. She bore the signs of advanced technology, possibly invasive. It reminded him vaguely of the rumors surrounding an entity called the Zenith Collective, an organization known for pushing the boundaries of genetic manipulation and using entire populations for research. He was no stranger to the idea that some advanced civilizations treated life as data. Still, the notion that he might have stumbled upon one of their cast-off experiments, or an escaped subject, left his stomach churning. He tried to recall what he'd heard about them, but none of the official documents had ever referenced a living creation with such potent bioluminescent tattoos embedded in her very flesh. A moan escaped her lips, and he bent closer. "Easy," he murmured, not even sure if she understood him. Her eyelids fluttered, and she took a labored breath. He tapped a few controls on the medical console, administering a mild sedative as well as hydration therapy. Her temperature was surprisingly stable, not indicative of hypothermia. But her body showed signs of stress, like she had recently endured severe trauma. He stepped back, running a hand over his short-cropped hair. He tried to focus on the immediate tasks: close the hatch, maintain a safe internal environment, keep an eye out for any sign of her true physiology that might threaten them both. The planet's atmosphere was hospitable to humans, but he had no clue how it might affect her, or what resources she needed to recover. After ensuring she was stable, Orion slid into the single chair at his makeshift command station. He opened a channel to the mother station, only to see the signal blocked by atmospheric interference. This was common enough in certain sectors with intense magnetic fields. He needed to move to higher ground or wait for a more opportune orbital alignment. He closed his eyes, recalling the protocol: report discoveries, avoid direct engagement with unknown species, gather data, and await instructions. But if he strictly followed the guidelines, she might die. A pang of conscience struck him. Abandoning her was unthinkable. He decided to help first, then worry about chain of command later. Time passed in a blur of medical scans and quiet watchfulness. Orion used the limited resources of the survey module's lab to try to identify any pathogens. So far, it seemed she posed no biological threat. Then, near dawn of the following day, she began to stir. He was half dozing on a stool beside her cot when he noticed her eyes open again, those deep violet eyes that startled him with their alert intensity. She looked around, noticing her surroundings, the overhead monitors, and then him. He saw confusion, wariness, and a flicker of relief at finding herself covered by the blanket. She parted her lips. This time, she whispered with a voice that vibrated at multiple pitches, "Where am I?" Her standard English was heavily accented by a curious tonality, yet he understood her. Orion spoke slowly, careful not to crowd her. "You're my survey craft on planet Arventus. I found you in a crater. You were in bad shape." She blinked, then tried to lift her arms. She examined the faintly glowing lines that spiraled across her forearms. They were more visible now that she wasn't lying in darkness. The patterns shifted slightly as she breathed, like living tattoos responding to her emotions. "I don't remember everything," she said, her voice soft. "My name." She paused, searching her fragmented memories. "Alicia. They call me Alicia." He inclined his head. "Alicia, I'm Captain Orion Kane, part of the Frontier Survey Division. Do you recall how you got to that crater?" She closed her eyes for a moment, grimacing. "There was a vessel. I remember an explosion, pain, then darkness. I escaped or was pushed out. I'm not sure. He considered the possibility that the crater was an impact site from some kind of escape pod. I'll do my best to help you, he said. She looked at him with an intensity that made his heart twist. Why, she asked. Why would you help me when I have nothing? He pressed his lips together, feeling the raw humanity of her question. Because you need help, and because it's the right thing to do. Whatever happened to you, I won't leave you at the mercy of it. Her eyes glistened with unspoken gratitude. She rested back against the pillow, exhaustion overcoming her once more. Orion rose and gently checked the infusion lines attached to her arm. He decided to let her rest. He had a sinking suspicion that her troubles ran deep, and that if she belonged to the Zenith Collective, they wouldn't simply give up. The next morning, Orion stood outside in the faint daylight, running a routine scan to map the local area for resources. As he pored over the readings, he detected a foreign technology signature in high orbit. Something large hovered there, performing sweeps across the planet's surface. Possibly a ship, and not a friendly one, given the encryption patterns. His heart rate quickened. Returning inside, he found Alicia sitting upright on the cot, the blanket still wrapped around her slender figure. She was studying the interior of the craft, as though memorizing every detail. When he told her about the technology signature overhead, she paled. They found me, she whispered. They're called the Zenith Collective. They created me, or at least altered me. Orion's jaw clenched. So, his suspicions had been correct. He'd heard rumors about the Zenith Collective's quest for perfection, about their willingness to perform unethical experiments on living beings, turning them into living prototypes for advanced adaptability, unstoppable soldiers, or living data storage. He'd never imagined he'd run into one of their creations face to face. Alicia hesitated. They'll come for me. They consider me their property. And if you stand in their way, they'll destroy you. That's what they do. Orion crouched beside her, placing a hand lightly on her blanket-covered shoulder. They won't find you so easily. I can keep us hidden, at least for a while. But the moment we attempt to flee the planet, they'll track us. She nodded, a frown creasing her azure brow. We should move away from your craft, then. Their scanning algorithms will detect standard frontier technology. If we rely on your systems to hide, they'll find you and me both. He exhaled, realizing she was right. The collective's resources dwarfed that of a lone surveyor. In time, they'd crack through any camouflage. All right, he said, I'll gather what we can carry. We'll move deeper into the forest. There are canyons north of here that might provide natural cover. Alicia tried to stand. She wavered, and he instinctively caught her elbow to keep her steady. She gave him a small, apologetic smile. My body is still recovering, she confessed. But I'll manage. He rummaged through a storage compartment, retrieving an extra set of survey clothes. They weren't tailored for her physique, but at least they would cover her better than a blanket. While he busied himself turning away politely, she slipped into the trousers and shirt, rolling the cuffs so they wouldn't drag. She also accepted a pair of boots that were a size too large, but it was better than nothing. Her gaze landed on him as he checked a pulse pistol. You're risking a lot, she said quietly. All for me. He paused, then nodded. No one deserves to be left to these creatures. I've heard enough about their methods to know they don't respect autonomy. She flexed her fingers, watching the lines of light dance across her hands. They view emotions as weaknesses. They manipulate them out of their creations, or at least they try to. Mine remained, so they labeled me flawed. Her tone carried a bitter edge. Still, I suspect the only reason I wasn't decommissioned on the spot was that my body responded well to their modifications. A rumble overhead drew their attention to the small window. Orion moved to the console. The orbital signature had shifted. Multiple smaller signals were detaching from the main craft, heading toward the planet's surface. They're deploying drop units, he muttered, heart pounding. We need to leave now. Alicia closed her eyes, inhaling. I feel them, she said softly. Or maybe I just remember how they track me. The implants in my body transmit a faint signature they can home in on. Is there a way to disable it? Orion asked, slinging a supply pack over his shoulder. She shook her head. Not without specialized equipment, I don't have. But sometimes I can shield it with certain minerals or environmental conditions. Her gaze flickered around, uncertain. We'll see. He gestured for her to follow, and together they stepped out of the survey craft. The forest enveloped them, dense trunks and climbing vines forming an intricate tapestry of glowing lines. Orion set the remote destruct protocol for the craft. If Zenith found the module, they wouldn't salvage any data from it. The idea pained him. He liked that ship, but it was better than allowing advanced technology to fall into the wrong hands. They fled east, using the forest's bioluminescent gloom as cover. Vines rustled in their wake, scattering tiny luminescent spores that drifted through the air like dust motes. Alicia's pace was steady, though she occasionally stumbled, still not fully healed. Orion kept a watchful eye on the sky, seeing nothing but the greenish canopy overhead. An hour later, they heard distant roars of engines, followed by a flash of light. Then came a wave of heat as an explosion echoed in the direction of Orion's craft. He grit his teeth. They found it faster than I thought. Alicia tensed, her glowing patterns flickering. Now they know I'm not there. They'll scan for footprints, heat signatures. We need to go deeper. There's a canyon near the planetary equator that might be laced with certain minerals. We tested them. Zenith was thorough. He glanced sidelong at her, catching the sadness in her voice. "You've been on this planet before?" She nodded. Briefly. They used it to test my adaptation to new environments. I didn't realize that's where I was escaping until I woke up. They pressed on. As the sun climbed overhead, the forest's bioluminescent glow diminished. The leaves turned from pale teal to a muted gray-green in natural light. Creatures chirped and scampered around them, some with shells that shimmered softly, others shaped like multi-legged reptiles. For Orion, it was difficult to fully appreciate the alien beauty, knowing armed pursuers were out there. Eventually, they reached a ravine carved by an ancient river. She guided him to a rocky outcrop that concealed a narrow entrance to a network of caves. Although it was cramped, Orion felt relieved stepping into the cool darkness. They had few options for a stand if Zenith cornered them, but at least it offered a moment's respite from overhead scans. He set down his pack. Alicia lowered herself to the ground, leaning against the stone wall with a weary sigh. Her luminous patterns were dimmer than before, perhaps a sign of exhaustion. Orion crouched beside her, offering a canteen of water. "Drink," he urged gently. She took a grateful sip. "I've never known kindness like this," she murmured, looking at him with a mixture of confusion and appreciation. He smiled sadly. "You deserve more than kindness. You deserve a chance to be free." They shared a quiet moment before the sound of footsteps echoed from deeper in the cave. Both tensed instantly, weapons at the ready. Out of the darkness emerged a crystalline drone, shaped like a humanoid figure with elongated limbs. It was a Zenith scout, and it immediately locked onto Alicia's signature with a faint beep. She stood, trembling with adrenaline. Orion raised his pulse pistol and fired. The bolt collided with the drone's shimmering armor, leaving a faint scorch mark but not disabling it. It emitted a shrill signal, likely calling reinforcements. Orion cursed, firing again. Alicia, rage flashing in her eyes, extended her hand. In a surge of raw power, the lines on her skin flared bright. The drone sparked and convulsed, as though it had been hit by an EMP from within. It collapsed into a heap of cracked components. Alicia staggered, clearly drained, but forced a determined stance. "More will come," she muttered. "They know my biosignature is in these caves." "Then we need a better plan," Orion said, scanning the collapsed drone. "I can't fight an entire army, and you can't just keep burning yourself out with that ability. Is there a chance we can reason with them?" She let out a short, bitter laugh. "Zenith reason? They see no point in negotiating with what they consider their creation." He clenched his jaw, a protective anger rising. "Then we'll have to outmaneuver them. You mentioned these minerals that could mask your biosignature if we go deeper." She rubbed her temple. "Yes, deeper into the caves, The walls have higher concentrations of certain or that disrupt scanning. But it's also unstable. Zenith might try to collapse the caves if they can't flush us out. Despite the risk, Orion nodded. It's our best shot. Let's go. They hurried deeper into twisting corridors of stone. The gloom pressed in on them. Alicia carried a handheld glow stick Orion gave her, while Orion's visor displayed a low-light feed. Water dripped from stalactites, forming tiny pools that reflected an eerie turquoise glow. Occasional pockets of luminous moss glowed like faint stars on the cave walls. They paused to catch their breath, hearts pounding. Alicia knelt by a slick patch of rock, running her fingers lightly over the striations. She closed her eyes as if concentrating. Orion watched her with a combination of curiosity and concern, noticing how her skin flickered. I'm trying to mask my presence, she explained quietly. The implants in me have a direct link to Zenith, but the mineral resonance here can disrupt it if I tune myself to it. Orion swallowed. I don't understand half of that, but if it works, do it. She gave him a fleeting smile, then focused. Subtle pulses of light coursed through her geometric markings, shifting from bright azure to a dimmer violet. She gasped, trembling, but forced herself to remain in that state. Then she exhaled. They'll have to scan more thoroughly to pinpoint us now. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Good. We'll find a small side chamber to hole up in, then figure out how to contact the mother station or a rescue vessel. He still needed to get word out about this entire situation. The Frontier Survey Division wouldn't simply allow the Zenith Collective to abduct a living being once they knew. But the question was whether Orion could send that message in time. They found a chamber with a high ceiling, partially collapsed on one side, but with enough space for them to stand. Orion set down his supply pack and quickly checked his portable communicator. The signal was too weak. He'd have to reach the surface or at least a vantage point above ground. Alicia rested, her back against the jagged wall, drawing slow breaths. Her face had lost some of its tension. It was remarkable how, in a single day, she had gone from near catatonic to calm defiance. Orion admired her resilience. She noticed his gaze and met it. I'm sorry, she whispered. You're caught up in something that's bigger than you realize. I don't want you to get hurt. He lowered himself beside her. You're not responsible for Zenith's cruelty. They were the ones who made you and treated you like a thing. If anything, I'm sorry you had to suffer that. Tears threatened at the corners of her eyes. They took everything. My memories, my original DNA. Whatever I was before, they twisted it. I can't even remember my home world or family. All I have left are glimpses, and the knowledge that the feelings they tried to burn out of me never died. He gently took her hand, ignoring the swirl of luminescent lines that danced under her skin. Then I'll help you figure out who you are now. That's a promise. She sniffed, a tentative, grateful smile appearing. Thank you. In that moment, he heard a distant rumble echo through the cave system. A muffled explosion from somewhere above. It might have been Zenith's forces blasting another passage. He quickly stood. We need to keep moving, or we'll be cornered if they're systematically collapsing tunnels. Alicia rose too, inhaling to steady herself. Let's go. If we can find a route that climbs out of here, maybe you could get a signal. They wove through twisting tunnels for what felt like hours. Occasionally, they heard blasts that caused tremors. At one point, dust and small rocks rained down, forcing them to hold their breath in fear of a total collapse. Fortunately, the walls held. Finally, they emerged into a higher chamber where a crack in the ceiling led in a sliver of light. With cautious steps, Orion and Alicia climbed up a precarious slope of rubble, reaching the fissure. Beyond it lay a vantage point on a rocky ledge overlooking the forest. It was late afternoon, the twin moons faint in the sky. Orion extracted his communicator, heart thudding. He set it to wideband encryption, hoping the mother station or any frontier vessel in the area could pick up his call. Static hissed, then a brief flicker of connection. He transmitted a distress signal. This is Captain Orion Kane of Frontier Survey Division, requesting emergency assistance on planet Arventus. Hostile presence identified as Zenith Collective. One rescue subject, critical status. Coordinates attached. He repeated the message. Another hiss. Then a faint voice crackled through. Kane, this is survey vessel Aurora responding. Your signal is weak. Estimated arrival in orbit in 5 hours. Relief flooded him. He shot Alicia a grin, but the moment was short-lived. A humming noise from overhead signaled a Zenith skiff swooping down. They must have detected the communication attempt. Alicia pressed herself against the ledge, eyes wide. From the skiff dropped 3 agile figures clad in crystalline armor. They moved with eerie coordination, advanced rifles in hand, scanning for targets. One barked in a flat, mechanical tone. Specimen Alicia, surrender immediately. The human will be neutralized if non-compliant. Orion aimed his pistol, refusing to budge. A volley of energy blasts erupted around him. He ducked behind a boulder, returning fire. Alicia clenched her jaw, stepping into the open with her luminous patterns flaring. One of the Zenith soldiers attempted to stun her with a specialized beam, but she projected a shimmering barrier that crackled upon impact. She winced, the strain evident on her face. I can't hold this for long, she muttered, sweat beading on her brow. Orion pressed the advantage, firing at the soldiers from behind her shield. 2 of them scattered for cover, but the third advanced, a tall figure with armor that glowed with swirling designs reminiscent of Alicia's. Specimen Alicia, you were created for higher purpose, it intoned. Return to your handlers. Something in Alicia's expression darkened. I'm not your property, she hissed. Her patterns blazed, and her barrier exploded outward, throwing the tall soldier backward. But the effort left her knees buckling, the feedback nearly overwhelming her. Orion rushed forward, firing at the nearest soldier until his pistol overheated. The soldier retaliated with a burst of crystalline shards that embedded in Orion's armor. He gasped at the impact, but the suit held up. He collapsed behind another rock, ears ringing. Alicia, panting, saw him in peril. Summoning every ounce of strength, she unleashed a wave of disruptive energy. The soldier's weapon short-circuited, bright sparks erupting from the muzzle. Yet the soldier remained lethal, lunging for Orion with a crystalline blade extruding from its forearm. In a moment of near desperation, Orion ducked, tackled the soldier's legs, and used the soldier's own momentum to send it stumbling off the ledge. A strangled, metallic cry rang out before it plummeted into the forest below. The final soldier, pinned behind a jagged boulder, fired blindly at them. Orion's pistol was still in cooldown, leaving him temporarily defenseless. Alicia, her breath ragged, tried one last time to focus her energy, but she staggered, her luminous tattoos flickering erratically. Suddenly, a streak of golden light tore across the ledge. The soldier's chest plate shattered as a new arrival. One of the Frontier Survey's advanced recon drones pelted the intruder with high-powered blasts. Orion blinked in relief, realizing help had arrived earlier than predicted. The soldier collapsed, crystalline armor splintering. Alicia sank to her knees, tears in her eyes, as the drone hovered near Orion's position, scanning for any additional threats. Moments later, an extended ramp from a small survey shuttle touched down on the ledge. 2 uniformed Frontier officers emerged, rifles trained on the fallen Zenith troops. One, a stern-looking woman with short-cropped hair, rushed to Orion's side. Captain Kane, she asked. We picked up your signal, came as soon as we could. He nodded, swallowing hard. Good timing. We need to get out of here. Zenith has more forces. Alicia looked up, trembling with a mixture of fear and relief, her eyes darting between the Frontier officers and Orion. Can I come? She whispered. He knelt next to her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. Of course you can. The other officer, upon seeing Alicia's markings, stared in awe. What is she? Orion set his jaw. She's a survivor of Zenith's experimentation. That's all you need to know right now. She's a person who needs our help. The officer nodded, seemingly unsure but too pressed for time to argue. Together, they escorted Alicia aboard the shuttle. The ramp retracted, and the craft took off toward the survey vessel Aurora, which hovered above the planet's atmosphere. Inside the shuttle's tight cabin, Alicia sat strapped into a seat, her eyes wide at all the new faces. Orion stayed beside her, offering what reassurance he could. She trembled, her luminous tattoos still pulsing irregularly from the stress of her powers. As the shuttle broke through into the upper atmosphere, the Zenith mothership loomed in the distance, a formidable silhouette. Yet, ironically, the Zenith vessel did not engage. Perhaps because the Frontier Survey's larger ship had arrived, or perhaps because Alicia's unpredictable power had forced them to recalculate. Orion held his breath until they were safely docked in the Aurora's bay. The moment they touched down, medical personnel and security teams swarmed around. Alicia shrank back as a protective measure, not trusting so many strangers. Orion stood protectively in front of her. "Easy," he said to the crew. "She's been through a lot. Give her space." A senior officer approached, scanning Alicia with a handheld device. "Captain, we need to debrief you. But first, let's ensure she's stable." He nodded curtly, turning to Alicia. "It's okay. They're here to help. I won't leave you alone." She clung to him for a moment, tears brimming in those violet eyes. "Please, I'll stay with you," he promised, ignoring the curious looks of his fellow officers. Within the Aurora's med bay, Alicia was given thorough scans. The doctors were astonished at the intricacy of her implants. "This is beyond anything we've documented," one murmured. "Her entire physiology is part organic, part advanced biotech. She's living technology." News spread quickly through the ship, and soon enough, a formal meeting was convened. Orion was called upon to give his report, explaining how he found Alicia and the details of the Zenith assault. Alicia waited anxiously in a side chamber, uncertain of her fate. The debate among the ship's commanding officers was heated. Some feared that harboring her would invite a larger-scale retaliation by Zenith. Others insisted the Frontier Charter protected all sentient beings who requested sanctuary. Orion stood firm, speaking up for Alicia's right to be recognized as a free individual, not an experiment. Eventually, the commanding officer ruled in Orion's favor. Alicia would be considered an autonomous being under the Frontier's protection. She sat quietly through the proceedings, relief evident in her posture once it was made. Official. But not everyone was satisfied. Political undertones lingered. Zenith was powerful, with ties to other advanced civilizations. If they claimed Alicia as property, a legal standoff could erupt. The Aurora's captain sent urgent communiques to the Central Frontier authorities, requesting guidance. Meanwhile, Orion stayed at Alicia's side during her examinations. She grimaced as needles extracted samples, but she endured it, clinging to his hand. "I don't want to be property anymore," she murmured one evening when they were alone in a medbay nook. "I want to feel real, to choose who I am." He brushed a strand of luminous hair from her face. "You're free now, Alicia. They can't claim you again. Not without a fight. And we're ready to fight if we must." She gazed at him, the shifting lines on her arms flickering with soft pulses that reflected her emotional state. "I owe you more than I can ever repay." He shook his head. "You owe me nothing." There was a raw sincerity in his voice, an unspoken connection that had grown between them, forged through shared peril and the simple act of compassion. Days passed aboard the Aurora. The Zenith mothership remained at the periphery of the system, occasionally sending cryptic signals that the Aurora refused to acknowledge. Alicia gradually regained her strength, practicing how to control her bioluminescent powers under the watchful eye of the medical staff. She discovered she could create small shields or even heal minor injuries faster than normal, though it required intense concentration. Her presence sparked fascination among the crew, some of whom were intrigued by her origins, others wary of the trouble it might bring. Orion became her unofficial guide, walking her through the corridors, showing her the observation deck with its panoramic view of Arventus. She would stare at the swirling clouds with a mixture of awe and sadness, knowing that was the place where she'd nearly died, yet also where she'd found salvation. At times, her nightmares returned. She would wake trembling, tears streaming as she recalled labs, needles, cold voices that called her specimen, never by a name. Orion would calm her, reminding her she was safe now. Over time, she confided in him details of the Zenith Collective, their belief that pure logic and genetic perfection trumped all. Emotions were considered wasteful variables that needed eradicating. She had been crafted to adapt to environments, but also to remain obedient and docile. Emotions had proven too stubborn to be fully erased, marking her as defective in their eyes. And yet it was precisely those emotions, she realized, that had helped her break free, forging a bond with the first person who showed her kindness. Every time she brushed Orion's hand or gazed into his concerned eyes, she felt a surge of power within her implants, as though they thrived on connection. It was something the Zenith had not predicted, a flaw in their design, an unquantifiable variable. The day came when Frontier Command relayed a final decision. Alicia was to be given full status as a protected individual, recognized by the Frontier Charter's clauses on extraterritorial refugees. No forced repatriation to Zenith would be permitted. Officially, the Zenith Collective had no legal ground to claim her. That same day, the Zenith mothership left the system, likely retreating to strategize. They were not known for giving up, so the threat still loomed. But, for the moment, Alicia was free. In a quiet corridor aboard the Aurora, she turned to Orion, tears in her eyes, but this time they were tears of happiness. "They've acknowledged me as a person," she whispered. "I'm not an experiment to them anymore." He nodded, a warm smile spreading across his features. "You're Alicia. You have the right to choose your own destiny." She took a small step closer, the subtle glow of her tattoos brightening in tandem with her heartbeat. "You've given me so much, a chance to live, to feel, to hope. What do I do now?" He reached out, taking her hand gently. "Whatever you want. Travel with me. Stay on a frontier world. Find a quiet place to heal. It's your call." Her fingers curled around his, an unspoken tenderness that overshadowed the cold manipulations she had suffered. "I'd like to stay with you," she said softly, cheeks flushing a deeper shade of azure. "At least until I figure out who I am on my own." Orion felt his own heart pounding. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak for a moment. "I'd like that. A lot," he finally managed. They wandered together through the observation deck, gazing out at the stars. She pressed her head against his shoulder, and the lights on her skin pulsed softly, an outward sign of an inner peace she had never known before. He slipped an arm around her, marveling at the improbable path that had brought them here. Standing there, with Arventus now just a distant blue-green or beyond the glass, they both sensed that this was only the beginning. The Zenith Collective would not remain quiet forever. There was also the question of Alicia's mysterious powers and whether others might covet them. But for now, in that moment, they held on to a fragile sense of safety and possibility. Alicia glanced up at Orion. "Will the Frontier let you continue your missions with me on board?" He smiled wryly. "I might have to file a few forms, but I'll make it work." She laughed for the first time he'd ever heard, a gentle, lilting sound. Then she turned serious. "I'm not afraid anymore. Not of Zenith or what they might do, but only because I'm not alone." He kissed her forehead lightly, a gesture of reassurance, of gratitude for her trust. "We'll face whatever comes, together. You have my word." In the starlight, her tattoos shimmered with new life. No longer mere instruments of control, but a testament to her resilience and freedom. She was an alien girl who once had nothing. No clothes, no hope. But now she had a name, a future, and in Orion, a companion who believed in her right to be more than a scientific curiosity. And so their journey continued. The Aurora sailed through the void, carrying them toward new frontiers, new challenges, and the promise of discovery. Alicia stood on the threshold of a life unburdened by the Zenith's manipulations, free to chart her course among the stars. Orion, no longer a lone surveyor, found in her a kindred spirit, an unexpected ally in a universe that often turned cold and hostile. They left Arventus behind, But the memory of that luminous forest and the crater where she had lain would forever remain a testament to the day he found an alien girl with nothing, and chose to give her hope instead of walking away. Unbeknownst to them, the path ahead would test their courage and convictions time and again, but they carried within them a certainty forged by compassion and defiance, that no being deserved to be property, and love, no matter how impossible, was a power beyond calculation. It might not be a love that followed the neat lines of logic or genetics. It was something else entirely, a phenomenon that neither frontier science nor Zenith's cold approach could quantify. In Alicia's violet eyes, Orion saw a universe of potential, and in his warm acceptance, she found a reason to trust. Hand in hand, they braced for the unknown, secure in the knowledge that they had already seen the worst and refused to bow. Even if the Zenith Collective returned, they would discover that experiments could break free, that carefully engineered obedience could be undone by simple acts of kindness. And if that sparked a conflict among the stars, then so be it. Alicia and Orion would face it together, side by side, their hearts resonating with the unstoppable force of free will. High above, the Aurora's engines hummed, drawing them deeper into the cosmic sea. The indefinite future awaited, a tapestry of infinite stories they had yet to write. But within that vast expanse, for the first time in her life, Alicia felt certain that she was not alone, that she was wanted, and that a bright new horizon beckoned in the starlight beyond.